Could Floridians stop paying property taxes in 2027? So Governor Ron DeSantis shared back in February on his X account when a constituent said we should abolish real estate taxes in the state of Florida.
We are a low tax state. We have the second lowest per capita state taxes in the entire country. Of course, we have no income tax. And even though we rely on sales tax, our sales tax is basically middle of the pack. You know, California, they have this really stiff income tax. But they also have the highest sales tax. They have an 8% sales tax statewide. It's higher in a lot of localities. So we've done a good job on that. And the property taxes are basically local, but we rank middle of the pack on property tax rates throughout the country. I don't think that's good enough. I think we have an opportunity, particularly given that we draw a lot of people, to really make an impact on property taxes. Man, I'll tell you, first of all, the realtors, I mean, you would boom like never before. I mean, are you kidding me? This would be really good. But part of what's happened right now, we're not seeing the same amount of sales, partially because of interest rates, but partially because of the property taxes. Who wants to move from Tampa to Jacksonville if you're going to end up with a house that's going to have a much higher tax basis, and then you're going to have to fork over all this? So people are locked into lower interest rates, lower property tax. It still goes up with homestead, but not as much as it would. And that's really, I think, inhibited the market. I think you would see the market respond very positively to this. So that's the main event. That's what we're going to be looking to do in November of 2026. And look, when you're in a position to be able to make a difference, listen to folks. What are the concerns? What would make it easier? There's certain things that if I could snap my finger, I would do. You know, we don't have control over everything as state government. I mean, there's a lot that goes on. We have a national economy. We have national policy. We have all this other stuff. But the one thing that we as Floridians, through the political process, can control is the tax. We can control that. We can go to the amendment, and we can do property taxes that way. You know, we can cut taxes on other taxes in Tallahassee. There's things you can do. We're in total control of that. That's not market-based. It's not because of what's going on in Washington. It's not because of what's going on in the private sector. We control that.
Here's what the governor wrote. Property taxes are local, not state. So we need to do a constitutional amendment, and that would require 60% of the voters to eliminate them, which I, meaning the governor, I would support, or even to reform or lower them. We should put the boldest amendment forward that has a chance of getting 60%. I agree that taxing land or property is the most oppressive and ineffective form of taxation. So in this video, I will be discussing the proposed legislation, how property taxes work currently, and the politics around the issue, and stay to the end, and I will give you my opinion about how we're going to do this. Let's start with some context around property taxes and why this is coming up now. Total property taxes have more than doubled since 2014, with a 40% rise in the 3 years leading up to 2024. In 2024, the property tax revenue for the state of Florida was $55 billion with a B dollars, which is $15 billion more than they were in 2020. So here's a little history lesson for you. Florida voters approved a constitutional amendment to create the homestead property tax exemption in 1934. This goes all the way back to that. The initial exemption was for the first $5,000 of homeowners residents to help people facing economic hardship during the Great Depression. Economic hardship. Keep that in mind. The homestead exemption has been a long-standing feature in the Florida state constitution, with an exemption that basically protects creditors or protects homeowners against creditors in foreclosure. The tax exemption specifically has increased several times since 1934. It was increased to $25,000 by a constitutional amendment in 1980. When this was increased to $25,000, it was 33% of the median home value in the state of Florida. Hear me out on that again. When it was increased from that original $5,000 to $25,000 by a constitutional amendment in 1980, that number, that $25,000, was 33% of the median home value in the state of Florida. In 2008, voters approved an additional exemption, bringing the total potential exemption to $50,000. This is where it stood since 2008. Florida has tried to increase it, the exemption, to $75,000 in 2018 under Amendment 1 that we voted on. But unfortunately, it was defeated. Narrow margin. Again, we needed to get to 60% to approve it, and we reached the threshold of 58% voting in the affirmative, so that motion fell short. Some additional pieces of context around this. Here in Florida, we have a 70-30-ish rule. 30% of property tax is held by homestead exemption, while 70% is held by commercial property, think commercial buildings, residential rentals, VRBOs, and the like. Majority of Floridians are paying more in insurance and property tax than they're paying in principal and interest on their mortgage. Let that sink in. The governor believes, as I do as well, that local governments have gotten bloated on these property taxes and that we can reduce taxes and revenues to the counties and municipalities and still provide a high quality level of service to our citizens. Through Governor DeSantis's DOGE efforts, he has saved Floridians, since he's taken office, over $50 billion. I think by bringing up this topic now at this important and critical junction of the next generation, we can empower our citizens to have a greater chance of the American dream of homeownership and help the next generation be able to afford to buy a new home and older generations to stay in their home. Let's talk about the politics on the issue. So earlier this year, as I mentioned, Governor DeSantis proposed this provocative idea: eliminate or reform property taxes in the state of Florida. The idea, in my opinion, was a test balloon. I think he wanted to see how people would respond to it and have a working atmosphere around it to get to the best idea and the most feasible idea. Well, there's been lots of people pontificating on the idea. It's gone national. Certainly in the state of Florida, we're talking about it. And people are saying to the governor, how would you pay if you were to abolish real estate taxes? How would you cover the lost revenue? Is this some kind of shell game that you're running here, right? And the governor has really only put forth himself one proposal, and that proposal was reduce property taxes by $1,000 and give that rebate check back to homeowners. The Florida House Speaker, Daniel Perez, proposed a tax reform committee, because that's what politicians do, form a committee to talk about it. It's not a bad idea, but that's just what they do, to discuss the issue and propose solutions on the idea of eliminating or reducing real estate property taxes. The politics on the matter are complicated. DeSantis and Perez don't seem to want to work together on the issue at this moment in time, and they've continued to clash in the media. Finger pointing, I guess, is still a thing. Speaker Perez has a committee working on possibilities, and I wanted to share with you some of the front runners that are being discussed the most. So the first front runner is to eliminate property taxes altogether. Second front runner would be create a new $500,000 homestead property tax exemption for non-school property taxes, right? Not affecting the school portion of it. And that $500,000 could be increased to $1 million for a Floridian who is over the age of 65 and they've lived here for an extended period of time as a homestead. The third front runner would be to increase the limitation on the caps. Right now, if you've homesteaded your property, you're capped at 3% per year for an increase. And if it's not a homestead property, you're capped at 10% per year going forward as well. So increasing those from 3 per year to 3% over a 3-year time frame. And then if you're a non-homestead property, it would be 15% over 3 years. Okay, so that's more of a, well, I'll get into that when I talk about pros and cons. The fourth idea would be to provide that rebate check of $1,000, get $1,000 in the mail. The fifth one would be to phase out property taxes over 10 years, completely phase them out and just have a runway of 10 years to do it. And then the last kind of front runner here is the homestead exemption in line as a percentage of taxable value. Okay. So each option comes with its own pros and cons. the cost of owning a home is expensive, and getting relief on the carrying costs would be a real, tangible benefit to homeowners. And I sincerely hope by the time we get to November 2026 that we have a viable options to vote on. But I did mention the pros and cons, so let me run through the pros and cons of each one. So eliminating property taxes altogether. The pro is that would save a lot of money for people who are homesteaded, a lot of money. The con would be this. People will tell you that if we eliminate property taxes, we're going to have to make it up somewhere else, that even with cuts, we're not going to be able to achieve what we need to achieve for our citizens in Florida. So we'll have to increase sales tax or some other area. So if we're taking from this bucket, we're going to have to get from the other bucket. That would be the con in that situation of how that would be discussed. Second one would be that new property tax exemption, raising it to $500,000 from $50,000. The pro would be, this would be a substantial amount of savings. There still would be some revenue coming through from property taxes, but this would be a significant dent in your property tax bill. And for people who are over 65, getting $1 million deduction would be quite substantial for them, either further reducing that for them since they're on a fixed budget. That would be the pro. The con would be for the 30% of the people who are benefiting from this. What about the other 70% in the commercial, the people who have non-homesteaded their properties, second homeowners, et cetera? What about them? What do they get? Okay, the third one would be that capping, lengthening out the cap. So if you've homesteaded your property and you're getting a 3% cap over a year, extending it to 3 years, or if you're non-homestead, taking that 10% cap per year, raising it to 15 over 3 years. The pro is, okay, there's something. You're giving me something. It doesn't feel like a whole lot to me, to be honest with you. It feels like a little dent, a little drop in the bucket, as they say. It doesn't feel like it's substantial enough to really have any kind of impact. I'd almost rather do nothing than have that. Or put that in conjunction and pair that with another option. I would consider that as viable if it doesn't overcomplicate it. The fourth one, provide a rebate to Floridians of $1,000. Look, I would love to get a check for $1,000 in the mail. That would be great. It really wouldn't move the needle for me and for many Floridians on wanting to buy or not wanting to buy, enhancing my budget, changing my lifestyle, nothing like that at all. So to me, it's fine as a pro. $1,000 is certainly a pro. The con would be, I just don't think it's doing enough. And I don't think that's something that we want our politicians to kind of kick the can further on. I think we want politicians who want to solve a problem, not perpetuate a problem. Phase out property taxes over 10 years. So the pro on this one is that you create a runway for yourself, for the counties, for the municipalities, for the people who will be affected by budgets that are changing, to have time to adjust to that. So maybe it's 100,000 now, year number 2, 200,000, 300,000, et cetera, in reduction of assessed value. I think this has a possibility to it. I don't know if this is the one that they're going to want to put forth. Because again, it goes back to that elimination. I don't know if they really want to eliminate property taxes, but I think that's a possibility. So I'll give you a pro. That's the pro, is that you're working on a path to get to full elimination of taxes. The con would be, I think there'll be a lot of people pushing back against, well, if we're going to eliminate it over time, how are we going to increase the revenue over time? Sales tax, et cetera. And then the last one for pro and con, homestead exemption in line with a percentage of the taxable value. The example I gave you when it was increased was 33% of the taxable value. I think the pro on this one would be, this is something that we can grow with over time. It may not be a one-time fits all for perpetuity, but it sure feels like as property values will grow over time, this will grow with property values. I would compare it to the tithe at church, where if I give 10% and my income is 100,000, I'm giving 10% of my income is $1 million or $2 million. The percentage is growing with as my income is growing. In this case, the percentage would grow as my assessed value grows, 25, 33% of that. So I like that as a pro. I do think this would substantially change the landscape in a way that people could accept and agree with. and it could cause people to take action to say, hey, like I'm saving money. I'm going to take action, and increase the probability of me buying a home, or allow myself to go buy a home or sell a home that's of lesser value and go to a larger home. I don't feel like that tax burden is going to prevent me from doing that. On the con side, you're still reducing the budget, right? So for government officials and for people who are looking at revenue and saying, hey, we're losing revenue, and now we know that what we're losing on this, and we just don't feel comfortable, we're going to have to increase taxes somewhere else. That would be the con in this situation. So let's start wrapping this up. Messaging matters, and there is a split on this approach. Governor DeSantis wants one bill for the voters to approve, where House Speaker Danny Perez wants to give voter options. And I get that, not having options is basically hell. I get it. But my experience with options is you can get decision fatigue and confusion if you have too many choices to make. When my wife and I go out to dinner, I'm kind of a quick decision maker when it comes to food. Kind of know what I want, know where I want to go, review the menu, make a decision. I've probably pre-decided what I wanted before I even get there. For my wife, the larger the menu, the longer time it takes her to make a decision. Her decision's usually very good at the end, but it can take a while. I can get a little hangry, and it can maybe set our date night off in the wrong direction. So what I do many times to help her out is I will send her a link to the website with the menu to look at ahead of time. But really what I can do is ask her the question, honey, what are you in the mood for? And she'll say, I'm in the mood for Italian, or I'm in the mood for a steak, or whatever it may be. And I try to narrow down her options coming into that decision. And by doing that, our evening goes much better, our date goes much better, and our meals go much better. So I believe that if, as we move forward and we're considering voting on an amendment that, as Governor DeSantis said, that we can approve, that we can get 60% of Floridians to approve, it's in our best interest to put one amendment that is strong, that is messaged clearly, and that people understand what they're voting for. Because there will be people on both sides of this topic. There'll be people talking about the benefits, and there'll be people talking about the cons and the reasons why this could be catastrophic or terrible for the state of Florida, or we won't be able to survive, or whatever they want to do. I've already seen the news stories. We need to make this simple. So one amendment, message it clearly to approve or reduce property taxes in the state of Florida, that we won't lose our quality of life, we won't lose our services, and we're not going to affect our infrastructure. We will have money for police. We will have money for firefighters. We will have money for our first responders, certainly for our teachers in our schools, our quality A-rated schools. And our infrastructure will not be eroding, right? This couldn't be farther from the truth. Florida has become one of the most attractive states to live in. As a real estate broker, I get calls from people all over the country who are looking to move to Florida for our quality of life, for our infrastructure, for our freedoms, right? For our beaches, for on and on and on, all these different reasons, for our schools, right? But the costs are becoming unmanageable, right? Real estate taxes is part of that. Let's make a smart decision and reduce our property tax burden to Floridians here. So if I was going to put this on a bumper sticker, here's what it would say. Let's make property taxes sensible again. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, click that like button, pound the subscribe. We'd love to stay in touch with you. We'd love to let you know every time we drop a new video, which is weekly, about helping you become a smart buyer, a smart seller, a smart consumer here if you're thinking about buying or selling in Palm Beach County, Florida.